Welcome back into Top Shelf, presented by Molson. Everyone in. I'm your host, Levi Smith, joined by Kyle, John, Josh, and we're here to recap the first day and a half-ish of the Olympics. We're coming at you guys about an hour removed from that Canada-Czech game. Awesome way to start the tournament for Canada here. And we're going to focus mostly on that game, obviously, and our biggest takeaways and stuff. We'll touch on the other games that we've seen so far as well. But yeah, let's get right into it. Canada 5, Czechia 0. Nothing for them. What a shutdown game from Canada. We'll start with you, Josh. Your biggest takeaway from this Canada win.
How can we not start with the 0 part of that score, right? Jordan Binnington, 26 save shutout. I don't know who had that on their bingo card, but I didn't for sure.
Certainly not me either.
Yeah. But, man, he was just absolutely sensational. I thought especially really late in that first period, Czech started to get some momentum going when it was still tied, and he really shut the door and kept them in it, and then they sort of cruised from there. So I think this is absolutely his tournament the rest of the way, with the exception of tomorrow's game, second of a back-to-back. Yeah. I would expect Thompson or Kemper to get that one. But I think no matter how Thompson or Kemper plays tomorrow, Binnington will play every other game in this tournament, and they'll hitch their wagon to him because he showed he steps up when it matters most.
Yeah, the rebound control was there. He kept his cool when he got, hit over by Fax at one point, and even kind of motioned towards Harley, like, let it go. Mm-hmm. We're trying to win this game. And that's for Jordan Binnington to do that. I mean, he's dialed in right now. And, like, one thing I forgot until I saw him in a Canadian jersey is how much he handles the puck and how well he does.
Yes.
Really
and
good at
the
it.
risk-reward mindset he has, where I've not, when you factor in 4 nations in this first game of the Olympics, I don't remember a single instance where I go, oh, he shouldn't be out there playing the puck right now. Yet he constantly plays the puck. Nice sort of, first passes, short passes. Sometimes he stretches his zone, but that's something I forgot about. I was very much reminded of it here. And that's, if you're a skater on Canada, you'll take it every day of the week, him doing some of that puck moving for you.
And that's something to watch going the rest of this tournament as well, because some of the early bounces in some of the women's games since that tournament began before the men's, there's been a couple of weird bounces and such, and there's been some goalies that have been a bit more tentative to go out of their net and play the puck. I'm curious to see if that ends up being a factor going forwards, either in terms of something going wrong for Binnington, or if that becomes an even bigger strength for Canada, where they have a confident goalie being able to go out there and play the puck where some other goalies might not be as confident to do that.
I think playing the puck, too, it's a really strong sign of this guy's super confident in himself. Yes. Even though he's had a super rough season in St. Louis, he's not changing. He still really believes in himself, and I think that's exactly what Canada needs.
Yeah, he looked comfortable as ever, which is the biggest thing that anybody really wanted to see as a Canada fan. So that was great to see. John, biggest takeaway?
It's one thing to talk about, preview this tournament, talk endlessly about the lineups, but to see it on the ice is another thing. And my biggest takeaway is that Canada's forward depth is their separator. U.S. has a really good forward group. There's certain stars sprinkled throughout the other teams, but no other team compares to Canada in terms of not only the high-end talent, the McDavids, McKinnons, Crosby, 1-2-3 punch down the middle, but also on the wing. And just throughout the lineup, I felt like every guy thrown over the boards was contributing in some way and has, enough of a unique skill set to contribute in different ways. Whether it's Tom Wilson, being pretty physical, but like in a very functional way. Mm-hmm. Hey, there's a guy with the puck. I'm going to go hit him. I'm not going to take a penalty here. Brandon Hagel, very physical as well, winning puck battles. Brad Marchand in the neutral zone on, that 2-0 goal, making just like a really savvy pass to Bro Horvat, who was going down the middle. And that goal was a good example of what I'm talking about too, in terms of like the puck, moving throughout the rink at such a fast pace, because these guys are so skilled, because they are, some of the best players on their own team, and they've just found a way to find quick chemistry. Celebrini and McDavid, great chemistry so far.
Yeah.
And we saw it further down the lineup, and, I forget which goal it was. I think it was the third goal or maybe it was the second goal. I'm getting confused. But literally every player on Canada touched the puck before it went in the net. Yeah. This is the Marner pass to Stone.
Yes.
It was just... And that line, the hockey IQ on that line is just off the charts. Crosby, Stone, Marner. So I was just blown away by not only the high-end talent, and we saw that on the power play, the sort of tic-tac-toe nature of having, some of the best players in the world move the puck around, but also at 5-on-5 where, forwards for sure, but the whole team, I would say, get a passing grade from this performance. No one, played below their standard.
Yeah.
How
absolutely.
often do we hear coaches talk about wanting to roll four lines, right? This
Yes.
is the absolute epitome
Yes.
of that in terms of your fourth line being an NHL first line. And yeah, it just comes at you in waves. And against a team like Czechia, who doesn't have that same level of depth, I think you really notice it in these games as well, where you might not notice it as much in like that USA potential matchup or some things like that. But in a game like this, where it's line after line after line, and it just doesn't let up, and then it either results in a power play opportunity because the team has to take a penalty or a goal in the back of the net. And I think we really saw that over the course of this game, where it kind of started close at the beginning of the game, at least in terms of some of the shot charts and some of the things like that. But as that game went along, Canada continued to pull away more and more over the course of the game. And a lot of that is due to that forward depth.
I think when Canada held its first practice and gave us that line preview, I think the one thing that caught us all by surprise was having McKinnon, McDavid, and Crosby all on different lines, especially because Crosby and McKinnon were so good together at Four Nations with Crosby on the wing. And obviously they have the history playing together in the summers in Nova Scotia. But having them all on separate lines, like, man, this team is just so deep, and they have enough wingers to support all three of them.
And theoretically, this gives them an edge up on any other team in terms of, like, you know, the Olympics is, you know, every inch is fought for. You know, you have to give, you know, every ounce of everything, all those cliches. Well, if you've got, you know, a 13-man forward group, that is just every shift coming at you, and you're not just relying like the Czechs on one trio, that can wear you down if you're even a good team like the U.S., even if you're Sweden. Like, you look up and there's Crosby, you look up, there's McKinnon, you look up, there's McDavid, and
No
you know,
off shift.
It's crazy. Even their fourth line, I felt was pretty effective today.
And
Absolutely.
It proved, too, like, obviously, you know, they only scored with 5 seconds left in the first period. And so at that point in the game, I'm looking at these lines, and I was like, okay, you know, I had that in my notes. I'm going to talk to you guys. Maybe Tom Wilson shouldn't be with Connor McDavid. Like, Celebrini's been solid, but is there a way we can kind of bolster these? And then as the game went on, it was just more and more and more. And it got to the point where at the end of the game, I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know what? I'm completely fine with these lines. Nick Suzuki got in the mix a little bit. So, yeah, I think that's super important to note. And I think also, too, credit to John Cooper, because he made a conscious effort to not only get Sam Bennett involved, but then before the Morrissey injury, he was getting the seventh defenseman. I think it was
Theodore was playing.
he was
PP
doing a
too.
good job of getting those guys in. And I think it's one of those things where, again, in a game against a powerhouse, in a game where things aren't going their way, I wouldn't be shocked to see him switch things up and stack lines a little bit. But when it looks like this against a team like Czechia, who they could every line handled their own, it's so easy, and it just is perfect for Canada.
Meanwhile, you've got Sweden. They had Philip Forsberg just sitting on the bench.
Playing one
recognized. They're going toe to toe with Italy. It's this tense game, and they don't even think to mix it up.
Yeah.
Very often, like that was pretty surprising. We don't need to go down that road in terms of discussing
There's-
that, but compare that to Canada, where
It's the
Cooper
two
was
ways-
perfectly happy moving guys in and out.
Yeah, it's the two ways of like the coach think, where it's like the 4 lines to 3 pairings is a lot easier to manage, and it's probably easier to manage for the players as well. But then you have 2 guys just sitting on your bench rotting unless there's an injury. The thing with John Cooper there that's interesting is what, over like the last 3 seasons, how often have we seen Tampa use 11 forwards, 7 defenders? He's of the NHL coaches, I don't think there's anyone in the NHL that's as used to managing kind of these odd number benches, and I think that is a big factor here for his comfort going to a 7 defender unit, or getting Shea Theodore in there, or having an odd number of forwards and having some different looks there.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of that back end, Kyle, your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, the one negative from this game is the Josh Morrissey injury. He comes out to begin the second period, tries it out, ends up leaving, doesn't return to the game. Obviously, with, again, the extra skaters that you can dress here, it wasn't a huge factor for Team Canada. Still had the 6 defenders. They just ended up rolling the 3 pairings as they kind of typically would. I was actually really glad to see Shea Theodore get in the lineup regularly, especially how his Four Nations went, him getting hurt there and not really getting that kind of longer opportunity at the Four Nations. But I think it's a big factor looking for the rest of this tournament, because if Morrissey misses some time, or if he's out, hopefully not for the rest of the tournament, we don't really know any details on that front yet. I think on paper, that's probably Canada's second best defenseman. Like, he's the guy that's going to anchor that second pairing after Makar. So if he's gone, then I think you kind of are having to rely more on maybe Thomas Harley than you were expecting to, or Shea Theodore has to jump into that spot. I'm curious how that goes for Team Canada the rest of this tournament if Morrissey is unavailable, because going into this tournament, it was like things are great if Makar's there and Morrissey's there and everything kind of fits into place there. But if one of those guys drops, then things get a little bit more dicey. And John, like talking about like our Olympic preview, talking about like the defense pairs, and that could be a question mark for Canada. Coming out of this game, it was a near perfect game. The one knock or mark against that was the injury to Josh Morrissey, and it was one of the areas that we had some concerns coming into the tournament was the defensive chemistry. And again, if Morrissey's just back for the next game, I think something we don't really think about much. But if he misses some time here, it gets to those eliminations games really, really quickly here at the Olympics.
Yeah.
I do think Theodore played really well, especially
Yes.
with the increased opportunities. I thought he was really poised, and he had some good, dangerous offensive chances early, even when Morrissey was still in the game. So I think Canada will be fine if Morrissey is out. Obviously, it's a big loss, but like again, they have depth, and like Shea Theodore's a guy too. He's mobile enough to play next to Parayko. You kind of need a bit of a puck mover in that spot because Parayko doesn't thrive there. So I think they'll be just fine. I thought. Doughty and Harley looked really good, like just playing really safe, and that's exactly I think what Canada wants out of its blue line, and why a guy like Evan Bouchard, who can make these super costly mistakes, isn't on the team.
Yeah, I found Doughty in general, he stuck out to me in like the best possible way, like super simple game, but in the corners, digging the puck out, making that simple hit, tight gaps, like just really like toned it down,
game.
like very veteran savvy game. Short first passes. I thought especially because coming in the tournament, you're kind of like, okay, what's he going to look like? And I know Czechia isn't the top test in the tournament, but a pretty good test, especially
I'd argue
speed-wise.
Canada's biggest test of this group play.
For sure.
Right. So, and like if you think about, how easy they got out of their own zone today. Like, I don't know, again, is that a Czechia thing? Whereas, when they play the Swiss, are they going to be all over them? I don't know. But Canada passed that test in terms of getting the puck, moving in the right direction to the forwards, which is where they really shine.
Yeah, Doughty looked like he'd been there before.
Exactly.
Because he has
Because
a
he
couple
has.
times. But
Yes.
that's exactly what you need out of like the guy at the end of the back end there. Like, what more could you ask for? I think that pair was incredible. Let's single some guys out. Our standout players from Canada's first Olympic game, presented by Molson. Start with you, Josh. Who was the one guy that impressed you the most?
I got Mitch Marner. I thought he was outstanding in this game. John already touched on it a little bit. That pass he had to Mark Stone, where he just
sick.
backhand sauce right over the sprawling defender, and then to jump over the defender just makes it look even cooler, I thought. So, but yeah, Marner also played the third most minutes among Canadian forwards, which I don't think many people would have had going in with the other names on this team, but that whole line is just going to be a line, I think, that really sticks together the rest of the tournament with Crosby and Stone. I think John Cooper can throw them out in any situation, offensive, defensive. And, yeah, Marner I thought he had a lot of jump. He had a really dangerous opportunity early in the game, too, and kind of lost it at the last second. But I thought he was dangerous and noticeable out there.
Yeah, John?
I'll go with Bo Horvat. Throw some flowers at him where he has that breakaway goal, and it was fantastic, a nice deke and to his backhand and everything. But even before that, I was really impressed with, one, the role that John Cooper is entrusting him with. So he's basically the Anthony Cirelli of this team, more or less. Obviously he's not as defensively responsible. But I think that John Cooper looks at Bo Horvat and says, if we have a defensive zone faceoff, you are our guy. He was even out there, as a center and as a left winger, depending on where he was in the lineup. He sort of ended up being the 13th forward. Like Bennett was taking a more regular shift with that fourth line. So I just found, even though he didn't play a ton of minutes, like whenever he was out there, whether it was sort of, staying close to his man and playing sort of, I guess, just smothering defense, or being really strong on the puck, or winning a faceoff, or scoring that goal. I was blown away with sort of the consistency shift to shift with Bo Horvat.
He had a really good kill early on, too.
Yes.
I was going to mention that, the pairing with Hagel. Like you mentioned, the Cirelli replacement, not just in terms of probably the role he's playing at 5-on-5, but also that penalty kill duo. The first one's over the board, shorthanded, was Horvat and Hagel, and that's going to be a huge part of his role on this team going forward.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, because, like, there's the whole thing of, like, do you take an all-star team or do you take a team of really good players and people can fit into roles? Like, I think Horvat is a perfect example where he flies under the radar in this forward group, like, just on paper. But when you see him in action and he's doing something specific, he can be really effective.
It's like, I don't know why this example is coming to mind as opposed to another Canadian, but, like, you look at, like, kind of the last guys in, and on one side, USA doesn't take a guy like Cole Caulfield. Canada takes a guy like Bo Horvat. Like, the difference in those two players, as good offensively as Caulfield is, Horvat that and what we saw today, he's so sound. Like, that's who you want. I wouldn't want a Cole Caulfield-esque player like that out there as opposed to what Bo Horvat did.
Well, in Canada, they have their high-end players,
Yeah.
right? Like, they don't need to just pick all the top scorers. And, I mean,
Exactly.
Horvat puts up a ton of points himself. So
Yeah. Kyle, standout?
Yeah, guys, Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
We got to talk about the star of this game.
Yeah.
3 assists, 6 shots on goal. He looked just different on the biggest stage than everyone else. It looked like this was the game he's been waiting for
Yes,
years, which he
yes.
quite literally was. I really was impressed by like his shot first mentality as well. Like we talk about the 3 assists, we think about McDavid probably as more of that playmaker first than the goal scorer. But how many like shot attempts did this guy have on goal? Like the 6 shots on goal, but in terms of shot attempts, I think it's got to be double digits. The great Dmitry Filipovich doing some chance tracking over the Olympics here. He had more chance contributions in terms of the shots on goal that he was creating and shot assists than Czechia had as an entire team.
That's
14
crazy.
for McDavid and 12 for Czechia based off of his tracking, which again is ridiculous. And he did that in like 18 minutes. And it's not like he played his usual like 24 plus or whatever that we'll probably see him play when the games matter a little bit more. But we talk about Team Canada so much, and we focus so much on like who's going to make the roster at the bottom of the lineup and some things like that. This is Connor McDavid's team. He's been waiting to have this opportunity for so long. The Four Nations was great for what it was, but the Olympics is another level than that. And I think we saw the just ridiculous level that McDavid is going to get to over the course of this tournament with 3 assists, 6 shots on goal to begin the tournament. I think that's a statement game from Connor McDavid here.
What I loved most about McDavid, sorry, John,
all
was
good.
first shift there just absolutely
Yes.
lays out
Setting the
Lucas
tone.
Sedlak,
Oh, yeah.
like set the tone. When you see a guy like McDavid doing that who isn't the most physical player, I think everyone is like, oh, like we're
Well, is
here.
that the biggest hit he's thrown in his career?
might
like
be.
maybe like he absolutely leveled him. So yeah, that just sets the tone. Everyone else is going to follow him into battle. So yeah, it was awesome to see.
Tons of pent-up energy with him.
Yeah.
You know, he's 29, McKinnon's 30, even Makari's 27. All these guys have been waiting. They've been, 2 Olympic cycles of not being in a Canadian jersey, and all of them were physical. I mean, like, McKinnon was...
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Cushman-
reverse hit. On
Yeah, he had the reverse hit.
Oscar the Grouch
Yeah,
out there.
Cushman mentioned the word grouchy, and I thought that was really good before the show. And like he's just like going at it with Radko Gudas for unknown reasons, but I guess Gudas will piss a lot of people off. But yeah, like McKinnon didn't show up a ton on the score sheet. I think he had 1 goal. Did he? Was he the one
he
to
had
pull the
the
trigger
power
on
play
that
goal,
power
yeah.
play goal?
Yeah.
But he was, as the game progressed, I found he was more and more involved in sort of the physicality and also just producing offense.
Yeah, curious to see how many times we sit down here and do our standout players and McDavid's not there. 'Cause, I mean, even at this level, best on best, it's crazy to see the level he can get to. My standout player, we already kind of gave him a shout, but I'm going to say Jordan Binnington solely for the fact that we were so concerned, especially on this show, very concerned about the goaltending, and this was like a patented, I think back to 2014, 2010, like just Canada grinding out 3-0, 4-0, like wins with 0 goals on the other side. What, Carey Price allowed 3 goals in the last Olympics, I think it was. And Jordan Binnington is on track for that right now. It's a classic Canada game where they just smother the other team. They score when they have to, and they find their chances. And someone's got to play their part on the back end in terms of the guy in net. Jordan Binnington did that, and for now, until I see something shaky, I'm feeling very good about what he's here to provide, and it looks just like what he was doing at the end of the Four Nations there. So my standout player, Jordan Binnington. A couple other like quick hitters I wanted to ask you guys about this game, and then we'll touch on the other games that we've seen so far a little bit. Go around the horn, or you guys can just answer when you feel. Tough 2 in a game like this. What do you think? Was there any weakness at all you could see that could be cause for concern for Canada down the road? Anything? Maybe is the Morrissey thing the biggest thing at this point?
The thing I would point to, less of a weakness or anything like that, but something in terms of the usage of these lines. Like we talk so much about these line combinations. As much as the line worked, and specifically the Celebrini-McDavid combination, I don't love Tom Wilson playing over 16 minutes on this roster, playing like 3.5 more minutes than McKinnon did in this game, playing 6 more minutes than Sam Reinhart did. I'm curious if there's some tweaking to come for that, But when the line worked as well as it did over the course of this game, there is kind of the just let's roll with it here. But I would be curious about like a Suzuki swap to that top line, Reinhart back alongside McKinnon there, and then maybe Tom Wilson back down into like a more fitting fourth line role in terms of some of the 5-on-5 usage. That would be the one. Again, this was like a flawless game for Team Canada in terms of like the actual on ice. The one thing I would be potentially worried about is maybe based on the way that the lines have gone, and we like the way that they're kind of spread out a little bit, is maybe having a little too much 5-on-5 Tom Wilson here is maybe my one concern.
I mean, Reinhart was 50 goal scorer on the fourth line, right? So you hope
I
that
think
he
he played 10-01 in this game.
Yeah, you hope that he gets moved up the lineup just based purely on like, let's see what he can do with these other guys. And he was obviously important for the Four Nations team. So I wonder if that's the switch. You bring Wilson down the fourth line, you bring Reinhart up to the top line, and he can play a similar role. I know he's not as physical, but he can be the puck retriever for Celebrini and McDavid there. And yeah, I think you don't touch Celebrini, McDavid. I think there's some real chemistry there. And I don't know where it came from, but it's obvious. I think it might be just they're on the same wavelength in terms of hockey
geniuses.
Yeah, and Celebrini, like one of the big things, him going from a rookie to a sophomore has been a shot. And I realize he just made a tip on his goal, but on his actual shot attempts, you could see that. You could see the quick release. There was one where it came to his skate, quickly off the skate, quickly off the stick. So that's something to keep an eye on moving forward too.
I'm going to disagree with you guys, actually. I love Tom Wilson on the top line. I thought he was really good, doing a lot of really good forechecking work, controlled aggression too. There was like one chance where he had an opportunity to really run through someone from behind and he totally let off. And I'm like, wow, this is a new Tom Wilson we're seeing here. And I thought there's a reason McDavid, not the only reason, but part of the reason a guy like McDavid had the puck the whole game is because Wilson's wreaking havoc on that forecheck and creating space for his line mates. So I think it was a good fit. But I would like to see if they get in a tighter game, how the ice time distribution changes among the forwards and whether they start loading up maybe like a Crosby and McKinnon together. So that'll be interesting to see, but I don't know if we'll see it in the round robin.
Cooper's got to have a nucular option here where he goes. Basically, it's probably the power play unit where he just throws them out at 5-on-5 or 6-on-5.
You mean where they have four of the, when it's all said and done, four of the top 15 or 20 players of all time on the same power play unit?
Well, yeah, and they all combined on that one goal. McKinnon for McDavid and Crosby. I mean,
and McCarr touched it before.
Yeah, how many times are you going to get to see that? I agree. I think when the going gets tough, and hopefully it's not, like a last resort option, like maybe they fall behind in a game, but I think you got to put somebody else on that top line at least to replace Tom Wilson. I think Celebrini there is okay, but I'm curious to see how that shakes out. My other question for you guys, was this convincing enough for a win for you guys to feel safe about Canada until we get to the medal games?
Yeah,
like the
100%.
It's only one game, but it was against pretty stiff competition, and they just completely silenced Czechia. Like we've talked about it throughout here, but it really needs to be emphasized that they load up their first line, and their first line, Czechia, their first line was the most dangerous, but it wasn't very dangerous.
Pasternak was not too noticeable.
No, but other than that, the other three lines were absolutely invisible. And Canada was able to just move through the neutral zone so easy. And like I mentioned before, the passing, east-west, even north-south, it just seemed very crisp and very, like there were other teams in this tournament, their first game where you're like Sweden. It was
they were Finland too,
puck management was a real problem there. With Canada, it was like they were dialed in. It's almost like they just picked up where they left off at Four Nations.
Yeah. So you're seeing this and you're like, all right, like gold medal game, like let's get ready for it.
100%. Yeah. I think honestly, other than the last 5 or 10 minutes of that first period, things got a little scrambly and Binnington had to make a few bigger saves than I think we would have hoped. Otherwise, it was pretty much a flawless game.
Yeah. And in terms of the other side of this matchup, how do you guys feel about the Czechs moving forward? Do you still have hope for them to make a bit of noise in this tournament? Did they look to kind of dead on the ground in this game to compete with, a Slovakia who looked great? Sweden's obviously going to pick it up. How do we feel about Czech moving forward?
I picked Czechia to win bronze, so I guess it's probably good to maybe take this in terms of my perspective here. I didn't love the fact that they loaded up the top line and then went to even line usage. Like if you're going to load up your 3 best forwards on the top line there, they got to play 22 plus minutes, especially in a game against Canada. Like the whole point of loading up a line like that would be give them the most minutes so that they're on the ice the most. Yes. And all of them played 19 minutes or under. It was very even usage for Czechia, and especially without Pavel Zacha due to injury, there's just not a lot of offense on this roster other than those top three forwards that were on the top line there in Hertl, Pasternak, and Matisz. So for me, going the rest of this tournament, especially to start a tournament, I'm totally fine with even usage. But if you're going to have that, you got to spread out the wealth, at least in terms of your top three forwards there. I would like to see them spread out a little bit if they're going to go to this even usage. And then if you're going to keep that top line together, I want to see them play a ton of minutes together. Because again, like we talked about some of the early chances that Czechia got, like Nate just had a good look on goal in that first period, funny enough, against the Colorado pairing. Pasternak had some decent opportunities, but those are going to be few and far between when they're playing like 18 minutes and you're getting nothing from the rest of the roster. So I still have faith in this Czechia roster. Like Dostal made some big saves, especially early on. Like this was almost a 0-0 game going into the second period here. I still like Czechia as a potential bronze medal game team, but they got to figure out some either lineup combinations or some usage over the course of this tournament.
I was a little lower on Czechia actually going to the tournament than most. I think it's mostly because of their blue line really scares me. Like after Hronek, it's just a bunch of guys who are really immobile, and other than Gudis, it's all non-NHLers. So I think that's the most concerning part. Like their blue line is, I'd say, even worse than Slovakia, worse than Switzerland for sure. So yeah, I have real concerns, especially Zacha, I think, is a huge miss just because, like Kyle was saying, especially if you have him there, you can spread it out and at least have pairs and have Zacha and Pasternak with a lesser forward, and then Matisz and Hertl with a lesser forward, and then you have two really dangerous lines. But without Zacha there, it's a little tougher to do that.
Yeah, that Switzerland Czechia game, I'm excited for.
That should be a really good game. And like to that Zacha point, like the second line for the Czechs today was Platt, Kampf, and Andre Kasha, and it's that's like a fine third checking line in terms of like what you expect for Team Czechia. It's really tough to have that little offense on your second line.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we talked about Czechia. Let's talk about some of the other games that we've seen so far before we wrap up. There's only one game left, and that's USA versus Latvia, right? Or is there another game I'm forgetting?
I can't remember the full schedule, but that's definitely
I think so.
one
I think
of them
we've
today.
seen everyone else play. So we'll go back to the start yesterday, and it starts with a bit of an upset. It was Slovakia, 4-1 over Finland. Slavkovsky scores twice. He's now 8th all-time amongst NHLers in Olympic goals. And the names on that list is like everyone Teemu Solani, Daniel Alfredsson, like Jerome McGinley. Incredible. And he's played, one game and then a full tournament. So good for him. And then shout out to, I'm going to butcher that, Samuel Levi?
Yep.
Is that right?
Nicely done.
Well done.
39. You know what helped is they've been going viral, but
The pronunciation.
Nice. I was locked into that.
Nino Niederreiter. Yeah.
But yeah, 40 shots against, 39 saves. So Finland looked so flat. Like watching that game, they looked flat. I know they had 40 shots, but they didn't feel like they were really grade A scoring chances at all. What were your guys' biggest takeaway from that game?
Yeah, for me, it was Finland's just lack of everything there,
Yes.
where, like, we talked about it beforehand, like, Slovakia has some recipe for success if Slavkovsky can find his groove again, and it's now 9 goals in 8 Olympic games or whatever it is for him. Just absurd stuff. But yeah, Finland, whether it's the coaching and just kind of the lines that they were running, like Mikko Rantanen played barely over 15 minutes in that game, some things like that. I didn't love what I saw from Finland, and that was even with like Miro Heiskanen playing over 27 minutes as well. Like there's some things that Finland has to figure out quickly here, because then it's Sweden and obviously Italy, but that Sweden game is now huge for them in terms of seeding. Like they're going to be in a play-in game probably no matter what. But you're talking about the difference between probably going into the tournament expecting them to be like the 6th seed, something like that in terms of the pecking order, get a favorable play-in game, and then a tough quarterfinal potentially. Now you're talking about like if they lose against Sweden and then beat Italy, like they might be like one of the like 10th seeded teams, and that's a tough play-in game to even get to the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
My biggest takeaway from yesterday, I'll combine both games. I just think it's hilarious how the game of hockey can sometimes just come down to a game of goalie.
Yeah.
Where Levi is lights out, and he's the AHL starter for the Minnesota Wild farm team. and he is lights out. And then Minnesota's actual starter, Philip Gustafsson, who's going to get some down ballot Vezina Trophy love this year, goes out and allows the first 2 goals on the first 4 shots he faces against Italy, and that first one was horrendous.
icing attempt. Gone.
Yeah, like I don't know
Horrific goal
what he
against.
was doing. So I think, and then Damian Clara was just awesome for Italy in that
It's
game
so bad
too,
that he
getting
got hurt.
peppered.
I know.
So sad. So bad.
But
Hopefully he comes back.
Yeah.
I think it's just funny in these short tournaments how goaltending can be
Yeah.
night and day difference
I
between
saw
wins
what
and
was
losses.
the tweet that came across my timeline. It's like the Olympics is awesome because like a guy with like a 800 save percentage, in the
884 in
yeah,
the
in the
AHL,
AHL can like
Yeah.
sometimes like suddenly just become like a country's entire hero. So
Yeah.
the goaltend it's awesome to see though, and it's so puzzling to me every time I see it. I'm like, where does this come from? Like, we can get to the Sweden-Italy game with Clara because he had 46 saves. The backup came in and had 9 saves, and so I started to look at that game being like, okay, yeah, they had 60 shots, but like these shots, like they're from like I don't want to hate on these guys too much because I think they played incredible. They got 55 combined saves against a team full of NHLers. The shot quality again, it reminded me a lot of Finland and what we were seeing there, where it's like a lot of fluffs from the point.
Yeah,
and stuff.
Sweden wasn't hitting the slot.
No, and I didn't think Sweden really looked that great at all. I know they won 5-2, but it's against Italy. Like, I think they went into that game as 6-goal favorites. So a 5-2 win with an empty netter and a couple late. What was your biggest takeaway from that game, aside from the Italian goaltending?
I mean, yeah, a lot of negative takeaways with Sweden, and the first one is something I mentioned earlier where they had Philip Forsberg sitting on their bench.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the coach to come out and say he's injured or there's internal conflict, but I don't think that's the case.
No.
Afterwards, Sweden's coach basically, it was a bit of word soup, but he basically said, like, I just didn't want to play Philip Forsberg. Like, he's not part of our top 12, and I just do not understand that.
No.
I do not understand it whatsoever. And then you've got Oliver Ekman-Larsson also sitting all game, and that's like fine if everything's going well, but those guys are there for a break in case of emergency, and it was an emergency with what was going on with Italy. And I thought on the positive side, the Dahlin-Forsling pair was super fun, and these 2 guys that are like so amazing at closing off plays, have tremendous skating. Dahlin always coming down sort of the sideboards downhill offensively. Like, I just love the interchangeability. They can both play on the right side if they happen to end up there. I really love that pair, but then you see like Victor Hedman, like bunch of pizzas, Rasmus Anderson, his partner, it wasn't pretty with him either. So it's like, how does Ekman-Larsson not get a couple shifts, not get, I don't know, let's just say there was a power play, not throw him out as the power, like, I don't know. That was pretty perplexing to me, to be honest, because it's the first game too. It's not like, this is gold medal and you got to like stick to your guns. It's like, this is your time to experiment. Try to play all your players.
Against
Forsberg,
Italy.
more goals than any Swedish player in the NHL this season. Like, and he's a physical guy. Like, you could throw him on a 4th line.
There must be something.
His one
going
shift he did have yesterday, he had a horrible turnover.
I saw
wonder
that.
if that was like, okay, well, but that was
What'd
the
he
plan to
expect?
start anyway. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
And then he's trying to do too much out there because he's only getting one shift.
He played,
it's a
he played a
disaster.
minute and 7 seconds. Pontus Holmberg played 14 minutes and 30 seconds.
I thought Holmberg
we're
played
not
pretty well.
taking we're not taking any Pontus Holmberg.
I
slander on
actually
this show.
really like that line, the
played
like
well.
defensive line that they've assembled. But you got to find some minutes for Forsberg. It's unacceptable.
It's insane, and as a Swede, like, it's too bad we don't have any Swedish hockey fans here because I'd love to sit them down and be like, hey,
God.
hey, what do you think about this? So yeah, quite the game there, and that Sweden-Finland game, like, I'm very curious to see how that goes now because both of those teams were quite underwhelming to me, and honestly made me feel better about Canada's performance today in the fact of like, okay, maybe they'll get going, sure, but from what I've seen right now, USA is the only team on my radar, and they haven't even played yet. So the last game here, the other 2 teams in Canada's group, it was this morning at 6 a.m. I can confidently say I was not up to watch the start of this one. Switzerland, 4-0 against France. Is this what we expected? Did you guys think Switzerland looked better than you were expecting? How did we feel about this? I wasn't expecting much from France. They got one NHL player in Texier.
Yeah, I was expecting a bigger scoreline, to be honest. Like, France kind of kept it relatively close for more of this game than I was expecting, but it's kind of the typical tournament opening game where everyone gets their touches. Switzerland, like we talked about Czechia's usage, Switzerland is the complete opposite, where they've gone to a very balanced lineup where basically there's an NHLer on the ice at all times. And looking ahead to that actually Canada game, like, it's something I'm interested to see because the way that the pairings were today is all of their NHL defensemen were on the left side, all of the non-NHL defensemen were on the right side. I do wonder if that's something that, like, Canada will attack tomorrow if that's something that stays in terms of attacking down the left side. But in terms of Switzerland, I really like what they did in terms of just balanced lineup, very even usage in this game, and it's a game that against France that you ultimately are pretty confident you're going to win. It was cool to see Leonardo Giannoni get that start.
Yeah.
He's a guy who's been awesome at the World Championships for years, and MVP at that tournament before, and at 38 years old, it looks like he's probably going to be the guy in net for Switzerland.
Yeah, I mean, on the plus side for the Swiss, like 4-0 win, he sure didn't have a point, right? So the distribution, at least from that standpoint, was good. But again, it is France, so that's another game. I'm curious to see how they fare against Canada.
The France games in this group play is probably stuff you're not taking too much from.
Yeah, exactly. So, so we got 2 games left that haven't been played. Sorry, I misspoke at the start. We also have Germany-Denmark. So
That's the other one.
which
How can we forget?
Again, though, I'm curious to see how that German team looks because nobody's really replicated this Slovakia winning formula of the considering like of the teams that we talked about in our last episode that have a couple high-end guys. So I'm expecting big things out of Germany still. Hopefully they don't let me down for my own sake. But been a great tournament so far. I'm looking forward to the rest of the way. We're going to be back here on Wednesday to recap after Canada's quarterfinal game. So hopefully they won. So it gives us. I mean, either way, the content's going to be good. But we look forward to everyone joining us all throughout the Olympics. This has been Top Shelf presented by Molson. We'll see you in the next episode.